Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome to week 2 of the Awaken program, where I've downloaded all my knowledge into just 5 keys and 3 foundations. So I hope this is going to be as useful for you as it has been for me throughout my life. And today we're talking about coaching. So I will do a recap on last week quickly, but any questions that you guys have before we begin? All right, well, feel free to just, raise a hand or jump in at any slide. And I love having this more as a conversation than as me just teaching. So feel free to jump in at any time. So I will share my screen. Alrighty, so today is about coaching, but before we just jump straight into that, just a recap on understanding from a big picture where we're at. So people use the metaphor of the path, and of course, that's a really good metaphor. I'm just going to mute you, Nigel, because I'm getting a bit of feedback. But on this path, it's not as if we're going somewhere. It's better to see that uh, it's our natural state of being, this sense of tranquility, happiness, um, and that we're trying to uncover that natural state. And the truth is that it's a path of undoing patterns that block our connection to this inherent well-being rather than adding something new. So we talked about that last week. And meditation uh, brings clarity and is allows you to observe these patterns. And that's, step one is the most important thing, is to be able to see these patterns. And mindfulness and clarity of mind, it's like seeing the bottom of a lake, whereas if the water is all rough, then we can't see through the lake. However, I think that meditation by itself cannot help us awaken the mind. In fact, ultimately, insight is what we need, but we'll talk about that in week 4. Uh, in the beginning of the journey, I think coaching is an incredibly helpful tool. And yeah, so complementary tool to meditation. Of once you see these patterns, then coaching can help you transform the mind to get rid of the patterns. And obviously, I've done a lot of work in the area of neuro-linguistic programming, which I feel is a very, very powerful tool. It is one of many. There are others out there that are great, but I definitely think NLP is up there as one of the quickest and the most powerful ways to work with the mind. I'm going to see if I can change you so that I can see you all. That's better. Alrighty, so now let's talk about patterns of the mind. Now, in particular, I'm talking, of course, really about mental patterns. Yeah, mental patterns, and of those patterns that are negative mental patterns. Yeah, ones that we don't like. So ones that cause suffering, because at the end of the day, we're all on a journey from basically suffering through to well-being is where we want to go. But every day we come across uh, patterns which cause us suffering. Now, in Pali, the name is dukkha. Okay, it causes us dukkha. The thing is, dukkha refers to anything from the mildest amount of discomfort, or another word that people sometimes use is unsatisfactoriness, all the way up to the most heaviest form of suffering. So uh, when we use the word suffering, it gives this idea of really heavy, painful feelings and high anxiety. But actually, in Awakening, we're trying to actually even get rid of those very, very fine types of just contraction of the mind, which to some of us, we think, well, that's just natural. Of course, they're going to be there. It's not optimal, but it's okay. And I'll get back to that later in the presentation. However, there are two fundamental ways that we cope with these patterns, these negative patterns. And the first is we distract ourselves. So the minute we're bored, the minute we're restless, the minute we've got a little bit of anxiety, the first thing we do is go to some sort of
Hey Google,
distractive.
turn all the lamps off.
Sorry, that's Mona. Did you want to ask a question or?
Oh, sorry, did I unmute myself? No, I have to mute it. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, mute it and then so yeah. So everyone on mute. But feel free to unmute if you've got a question. So we distract ourselves, and you all know the common distractions. Screen time is a big one these days, but the old ones of sugary foods, some sort of like coffee or alcohol, but even things that we might consider sort of healthy, as going and chatting with friends, going down the local sports club, even very healthy things. Like you might think, oh, I'm a bit heavy and I might go to the gym and work out. Now that of course is infinitely better than say taking drugs or doing something terrible like that. But they still are, at the end of the day, they're all coping mechanisms to distract ourselves from these negative mental patterns. The last thing we want to do is to turn towards them and really look at them, because they're uncomfortable. So we don't want to go there. However, sometimes these mental patterns become so pronounced and so difficult that we just have no option. We cannot stop thinking about those things that cause us anxiety, or that cause us sadness or whatever. And then we are forced to do the other way, which is actually to seek help and to confront these patterns and to try to work on it in a systemic way to overcome these mental patterns. So why do we wait until things get really bad before we face them? Shouldn't we try to get rid of these patterns, even while they're small, before they get into very strongly, strong neural pathways in our mind? Of course, we should, but distraction does work. There's no doubt about it. People can distract themselves their whole life and try to avoid mental patterns. But if we're going to want to awaken the mind, one of the things we've got to learn to do is to face these patterns. And the awakening, I think, is driven by one of two things. And the first is suffering. We suffer so much that we just have to find a way out. And the second is curiosity. So it's like, I've heard about people saying that you can achieve states of great rapture and great joy and great equanimity. And I'm curious to know more, and I would like to do what people tell me to do and see if it works for me. So curiosity can help us. Otherwise, it's suffering that will actually push us in this direction. All right. So it's only when the first option becomes unsustainable that there seems to be no other way that we truly commit to the second path. For example, a deeply ingrained belief of I have to do everything, um, makes it incredibly difficult to sort of ask for help. And then it creates this cycle as well, these beliefs. So, all right. So what is coaching? Well, if I define it relative to meditation, meditation can be active, but it is more observing. You just observe, observe, observe. And I would say that if you observe for long enough, these patterns will resolve themselves. However, it can take a long time. And that's why some form of more active engagement can be helpful along the way. So coaching provides an active engagement with our mental and emotional patterns, going beyond observation into transformation. So NLP techniques can achieve in much quicker, in minutes I've got, the meditation alone might take months to evolve. So for example, we've got this phobia cure in NLP, which is one of the most impressive NLP processes, which can get rid of a phobia in about 5 or 10 minutes, which some people could have had for years. And the normal way of coping with phobias is called exposure therapy, which can take months and is very, very difficult. So that's an example how good coaching in the right context can be really, really powerful for people to resolve patterns, and then you can get back to the meditation. So, of course, one of the things that is at the beginning of an NLP session is this idea that my feelings are my responsibility. In NLP, we talk about this thing about cause and effect. Are we the cause of our emotions or are we the effect? Because what we like to do is point the blame out there and say, it's Buddy's fault. He's annoying me. Or it's Catherine's fault. She's the annoying one. It's not me. But I say, well, it doesn't, if you are being triggered, yes, there might be external circumstances, but it's your triggers. So you've got to get rid of your triggers. And then once they're gone, it doesn't matter how people behave out there. You won't get influenced or feel negative about what's happening out there. But you've got to take that responsibility. And so many people don't want to take responsibility for their own actions or their own feelings or their own thoughts. However, critical distinction, your feelings and patterns are not you. So the other problem is you go, yeah, well, I take responsibility for being angry, but I'm just an angry person. So we label ourselves with, I am this and it's just unchangeable. It's written hardwired into my DNA. And that gives you a disadvantage in wanting to change these patterns. It makes it impossible, really. So so we not only have to take responsibility that these are my feelings, I've got to change it, but also have this confidence that, yes, it's just a pattern. I can change it. Everyone can change their patterns. They're constructs which can be examined and transformed. Any questions so far? Everyone agree?
Yeah.
All righty. So the power of NLP can be summed up into the what has been made can be unmade. And I put it to you, but whatever pattern that you're undergoing, that you're feeling at the moment, that was made by you at some point in the past. So you decided to feel a certain way. And because you made it, you can unmake it. And that's NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So another word for a pattern is a program. So you could say that these neural networks are little programs, just like software programs in our mind. And so we can reprogram them.
Recording.
That was Michelle. I think that's all good. Okay, so now coaching. I'm gonna mute you, Michelle. I'm getting feedback.
Yep.
Alrighty. Two Michelles here. Right, so coaching versus awakening, are they different paths? Well, it depends on how you use coaching. So coaching also is similar to therapy, I guess. Coaching is, anyway, I won't go into the difference there, but I will say that there are some quite famous coaches, and many of them are these like kind of big empowerment and achievement coaches. Like Tony Robbins is a really great example. So I don't know, most of you will have, some of you won't have, but Tony Robbins comes up on the stage and says, you are the greatest, you can do anything, you are powerful. He's got this course called Awaken the Giant Within. Now, that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's all good, and it helps us achieve what we want to achieve in life. But to an extent, it's also building a sort of a puffed up sense of ego. This idea that we can identify with this lion and this great being that can, and some of them are really quite, I've seen presenters to say, there are sheep and there are wolves, and most of the people in the world are sheep, and you are to be the wolf and you are to prey on the sheep, It's like, oh gosh. Anyway, that sort of coaching, I would say, is fine, but from an awakening point of view, it could be counterproductive, because the whole idea of awakening is to actually get rid of the ego. So some coaching, not all, some coaching focuses on empowerment, achievement, and building a stronger sense of ego, whereas spiritual awakening focuses on reducing and ultimately dissolving the identification. But when it comes to getting rid of patterns, they are lockstep. Coaching and awakening are just after the same thing, is to get rid of patterns, get rid of unhelpful patterns. In NLP, we create helpful patterns, but whereas in awakening, we want to get rid of all patterns, but certainly in getting rid of the non-helpful ones, they are in lockstep together. And both approaches offer valuable tools for inner work. Anyone agree or disagree or want to jump in?
Agree.
Good. All right. So what I like to do with my students, if people are interested in the awakening journey in the longer term, is to really alternate between meditation and coaching. I just think the two just reinforce each other so well. And for those of you that were on the Bali retreat, you'll know that in the morning we did meditation, and then the sort of after breakfast and throughout the day we did coaching, and then a bit more meditation in the evening. And I just think they work together. And in the mentoring program where we meet once a week, we will alternate between learning all about meditation one week and then doing some coaching in the second week. And what coaching can be done, I think, in two different ways. One is that I like to take people through like a course. So it's almost a little bit like a mini NLP course, and take people through learning, first of all, like how the mind works and at various steps. Because sometimes I've found, like, I'll say to people, okay, I'm going to give you some coaching. What would you like some coaching on? And most people are like, I don't know, I'm pretty good, I'm all right. And people are just like, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they've got patterns going on. So sometimes it's best to do a teaching and say, this is how a pattern works. This is how negative emotion works. This is how limiting belief works. This is how conflict works. This is how, on and on and on. This is how habit works, for example. And then people start identifying, yeah, I've got a habit. I have a habit of, eating chocolate, or I have a habit of doing this or doing that, or, oh, yeah, I've got this conflict. In fact, that conflict sounds like me, or, wow, I've got these negative beliefs. So the route that I go on generally for coaching is, first of all, to teach people about the mind. And there's several models which I use to teach people how the mind works. Now, a model is never the real thing. So if I teach you the Korzybski model, or the TMI model, or the Gene Early logical levels model, these are not the real thing, but boy, they give insights and they're helpful for understanding how the mind works. And so if we get time today, I might even go into the Korzybski model a little bit, to sort of give you a little bit of a taster. But if those people who want to go further in this direction, then definitely any NLP course is highly recommended. I love it. But there are other modalities as well in which you can learn. I mean, there's so many. There's EFT, and then there's rebirthing, and then there's IFS, and then there's, all of these different ways, is it landmark, all that. And then once people understand their mind, it's like, well, what do you want? Because NLP, for a start, starts with the question of, what do I actually want? If you want to develop habits in a certain direction, you've got to know where you're going. So then it's good to work on goals. But interestingly enough, before I go too far on goals, it's good to find out goals are only driven by our values. And if you don't know your values, often goals can sometimes be uh, modified or influenced by what you think you should do, what society says you should do. And so it's really good to to understand your values and straighten out your values. Now, we do all of this on the Bali retreat, and I just think this process, this methodology, is a really good way. So yeah, so that's number 3. Number 4 is working with emotions. So one of the big reasons why we can't achieve our goals is because of negative emotions. Yeah, I want to do this, but I'm worried about this, or I always get sabotaged because I get so angry or I get so frustrated. So working with emotions is huge. That can take weeks. Yeah. But along with emotions, there's beliefs, and belief structures can be like, I'm not good enough. No one's going to want to partner with me. No one's going to want to love me. I'm not smart enough. All things like that can also hinder us. So beliefs and emotions are really quite closely connected, but we work with them separately along this journey. Also, there tends to be these, along with beliefs can be conflicted. So you can have belief that, well, you know, um, you have to work hard to be free. So freedom doesn't just come to anybody. You've got to really work hard to get that. And that's like a conflict. I have to work hard, but I want to be free. But I know I have to work hard, but I want to be free. So I want to be able to work hard so I can be free. Or conflicts are very, very common. And almost all types of mental disturbances are conflicts. Like, I want to do coaching, but I want to do something else. I want to do my own personal journey, but I want to create a business. I want to listen to Peter, but I also want to have a cup of coffee. Could be just anything. So conflicts are there all the time in the mind. And then finally, I know we sort of work our way up to it, but doing all this groundwork, we have to say, well, what's the real underlying thing? And it gets down to what's our purpose and our identity. So I work on something called the logical levels to see if I can find, do you really have a purpose in life? And if not, that's something to work with. And if you do, then how does that influence all the coaching that you do? So you get all of these planks in order, and that goes a long way to helping getting towards a very empowered, sort of aligned direction in your life. And then once you've done all that, you basically rinse and repeat. So you do it again. Once you know your purpose, you can actually start from understanding the mind better, followed by goals, followed by values. And you'll notice the second time around, they kind of alter and they change, and they get more focused and things like that. So NLP is an ongoing process. It never ends. Coaching never ends. In fact, there's a big conversation about awakening and coaching. And people say the actual reason why you have to awaken is because you will never get to the bottom of your mental problems. It's an unending well. It just never ends. You know, people who have done coaching when they're young are still doing coaching in their 60s and 70s and things like that. Um, Admittedly, you can go a long way, and there are always these trace elements of coaching that need to be worked on. Whereas awakening is that final, after awakening, it's still good to have coaching, but you don't really need it anymore. But until then, you keep going around in that cycle. Alrighty. Any questions so far? All right, we're doing well. Now,
Yeah.
the next thing, one of the reasons why we need to keep rinse and repeat and going round and round is because the mind has many, many layers. And when people come to me, they might come to me with a very, very surface problem. This is just in like, not in terms of meditation. Like, and I've just put some examples here. Like, oh, I eat too much chocolate. Can you help me overcome eating chocolate? And in NLP, we have a process called like to dislike, which can actually, in 5 minutes, I can cause you to vomit at the idea of eating chocolate. And that's a really good behavioral technique to stop people, say, eating chocolate or something like that. But
And
that's
I can
surf,
it's done that to me.
and I've done that. Yeah, done that to a couple of you here. So good job. But a surface behavior always has something underlying it, which is an emotional trigger. You don't eat chocolate all the time, at least some people do, but most of us don't. And it's driven by, in my case, I've got driven by boredom and restlessness. So when you're restless or bored, you go, oh, what can I do? What can I do? Oh, I feel like a piece of chocolate. So there's an emotional trigger. And so if you want to dive a little bit deeper into a person that comes to you and you say, uh, oh, I eat too much chocolate, I could say, well, I could cure you of eating chocolate, but we could go deeper and we could get rid of the emotional trigger which causes you to want to eat chocolate. Because if you just get rid of the surface behavior and the emotional trigger is there, they may just replace chocolate with something else, just as bad. Yeah? Have a cigarette or something. And so we could we could work on the emotional trigger. Now, emotional triggers are just another layer. Beneath them is maybe an avoidance strategy. Maybe, and I'm just giving this as an example, maybe there's an unwillingness to engage in social interactions. Maybe you could engage with your family or with friends, but there's an internal resistance to that. And so because of that, you get bored and restless. And because of that, you eat chocolate. And so that's another layer. And when we do this rinse and repeat, this going around this coaching cycle, we often get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, the avoidance strategy might be another layer. And beneath that is a core belief. Well, what could be a core belief of not wanting to engage in social interactions? Well, you've got a deep core belief of, I'm not good enough. And maybe, you need external validation to find happiness, but you're afraid that people will not validate you and they'll say something negative. So you're afraid to get into social situations, which means that you get bored and restless, which means that you eat chocolate. So you can see that like the mind just goes down layer by layer by layer by layer. And then I've got the bottommost layer of so let's stay at core beliefs. It's in NLP when you do master prac. We talk about how every person often has a very few number of core beliefs. And they can be limiting core beliefs and also generative or positive core beliefs. So I'm not good enough might be one that has run through your whole life. And often people will literally only have one or two of these beliefs. So they're like the root of the tree. And all the rest is like branches. And so let's say with this example, I'm not good enough. It not only will go into an avoidance strategy, it might turn into a fear of public spaces. And then that might cause other emotional triggers like fear. And then fear has all sorts of surface behaviors, like maybe getting angry at people, because sometimes a cover for fear is a kind of a domination of people, a bit of a, you know, yeah, often aggressive people are beneath, they have a lot of problems in themselves. So I see, whenever someone comes to me and they come with a surface behavior, that's like the leaves on the end of the tree. And we can pluck off one leaf at a time, or eventually we can go back to the branch and cut the branch off, or we could even go back to the trunk and cut the trunk off. So the core belief. Yes, Buddy.
Yeah, Peter, I was just going to ask, this is very interesting. So in terms of when you say you rinse and repeat the coaching, so what's an example of in terms of, so is it like one session you would do the surface behavior and then the second session emotional triggers, or what do you mean by the rinse and repeat
Well, it
there?
does tend to get deeper, but yeah, generally once you've got rid of a few surface behaviors, and particularly if people see that they just replace another surface behavior with something different, people get interested in, well, what's beneath this? And so we will go to a deeper level. But and often when people come, their aim is quite surface. Like they'll come and they'll say, I've come to coaching because my boss said I have to come to coaching because he said I'm angry at work. That's kind of like a surface thing. Or, I can't get a job, so I need coaching for you to help me get a job. It's a very surface thing. And so once you go around the coaching cycle and they get that sort of a outcome in that area, they might come and they say, well, not only can I get a job, I can't seem to hold a girlfriend. It's like, well, I wonder if the two connected, what's at the root of these, and then you find a root. Yeah, so the cycle usually does get deeper naturally if you're willing to go round and round. And I will say that beneath core beliefs, there's an actual, well, Buddhism says, there's a fundamental illusion that sits at the bottom of everything, which is that I'm a separate me. I'm separate to the universe. That is that is the core belief, which no one ever questions, except people that want to do awakening, which actually underlies everything else. So if you want me, I already know what all your biggest problems are. I don't have to even ask you, because it's the same with basically every human being, I would say, on the planet. So by uncovering these underlying layers allows us to address the root problem and get deeper and deeper and deeper, and not just the symptoms. But, and here's the big but, and this is one of the biggest points of my presentation, is that most of us stop going deeper once suffering subsides. So my next slide, I did a little graph. Engineers like graphs. Unfortunately, I couldn't paint these different colors, but I've got a graph here of effort, which is kind of like the same. I put it up and down here. And the amount of suffering that we have versus as we move through this, our suffering does get less. So if we come to coaching and I have an initial engagement, people come to me and they're like suffering really badly. I have anxiety every night. I can't sleep. My life is terrible. And often I will help them resolve their surface patterns. And they go, oh my God, that was amazing. I just feel so much better. I've been able to resolve that pattern. That's great. And they say, oh, let's do another one. And I might hint, okay, let's do a core belief, or let's do another surface pattern, and then we resolve that. And as we do that, the suffering reduces, and it reduces to a point where it's okay. Like, yeah, sure, my life is pretty shitty, but it's okay. It's, tell you what, it's a hell of a lot better than it was, a couple of months ago. And I say, well, keep on meditating, keep doing an hour a day, come back for coaching. I'll give you a package. I'll give you a package of $5, 5 sessions, which is cheaper. And they go, you know what? I'm a bit busy and I'm a bit like, well, I haven't got the money. And you know what? I've actually decided I'm going to go on a holiday. I've got a holiday, $15,000 holiday to Europe. That's what people have been telling me. And I think that's going to fix me. And so they give up. Okay. And I'll see this over and over and over again. And so, that's okay. I'm here to try to help. I understand it's totally okay. That's just human nature. But there is a part of me that goes, well, it's a pity because you're on this track. And if you'd have kept going, you're missing out on certain things. So what are you missing out on? Oh, no. Yeah, I'll go to this. So what if you were to stay the course? And Buddy, I'll come back to you in a sec. I'll come back to that slide. Is if you stay the course and you keep going to deeper and deeper patterns, then you can achieve something called an awakening of mind. And when you get an awakening of mind, even if you don't actually get that, you can still, even as you approach it, you get feelings of deep, deep contentment and peace. And these currents of really, really powerful joy come up in you. And they just come out of nowhere at the most minor of things. You might see a spider spinning a, spider web and just be completely like it's just out of this world when some of those kind of fountains of joy just come up and you just feel an incredibly powerful sense of joy. There's also a real sense of sacredness. When you tap in to deep tranquility and sort of, these deep currents of joy, there's a sense of the divine, you might say. There's a sense of you're no longer disconnected from the universe. You've tapped into a deep sense of sacred peace and joy in the universe. If you're religious, you definitely swear that you're deepening into whatever religion you practice. And I would say you also become a really good living model for others. So we most of us here want to help others. But being tossed around by negative thought patterns often can not make us as powerful as if we are connected to deep tranquility and joy. Now I get it. People have never experienced this. Although some people, they say as a baby, you will have experienced this because as a baby, you don't have that conceptual mind, but we can't remember that far back. So we're not sure. And so, when you get to this point in the graph, I get it. You go, oh, life is actually pretty good. I'm about as good as what I've been in the past. And that seems pretty good to me. And, and I've got this holiday planned and that's pretty good. And I'm saving my money up. So yeah, I'm going to do that. So it makes sense. But it is a pity that people don't keep going down this line, if you like. But the effort becomes, I guess they don't understand what the effort can bring. And so they say, yeah, I'm not going to give it any more effort. So anyway, I'll leave it there. And Buddy, what question did you have?
Yeah, no, it was exactly what you just came back to. So in terms of like with us humans, every decision we make is, even if we don't consciously think of it, subconsciously we think of, is there in what this decision that I make, is there going to be more pleasure than pain? So we're going to gain pleasure or avoid pain. So as you show in that graph, if it seems that the effort is more than the pain, then the pleasure that we'll gain or the pain we'll avoid, we're going to make that decision to, not do coaching or whatever. So do you think in that sense, the remedy for that, with those clients is to, as you said, highlight the pain or educate them more on the potential pain and that they could avoid or the pleasure they could gain from delving deeper, because they're just not aware of that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the two drivers from what I can see are, as I said before, curiosity and suffering. So, the two things that I would wish upon these people, I'm going to be a bit tongue in cheek, are that A, you get more curious, or B, your life gets really bad and you suffer. Because they're the two things that will drive people on. I mean, I'm joking. I don't want anyone to suffer. But it's true that people put this down and they'll go for a year and they will suffer, and then they'll come back and they go, oh, I'm in a really bad state. And I was actually really good when I was doing this before, and I've come back and I really want to pick up from where I left off. It's just the nature of the human condition that we live in, that often we are driven by suffering. So, I don't wish it on anybody, but it is the thing that actually prods a lot of people if they're not curious. For myself, I'm a very curious person. I just was fascinated right from a young age, and so I was really driven a lot more by curiosity than necessarily suffering per se. But I think for most people, it's when they really suffer that they get interested in this sort of stuff. Nigel.
Yes, I would agree with that. Very quickly, don't want to go into any great details, but yeah, my suffering came first, and then I was curious. I wanted to know why and how and what I could do about it. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Yep. And of course, education, but I don't think education's enough, because all of this stuff is out there and available if people are curious. But you need a motivation before you engage in this sort of teaching. And then the teaching kind of goes, oh, that makes sense. I'll give it a try.
Yes, a bit of how about things like, for example, as you talked about Tony Robbins, what about like stacking all the pain, like a list of all pain things and a list of all the pleasures of taking particular action?
Actually, so it is a good question. It is a good question. And the fundamental thing here, which is another teaching, is there's a difference between pleasure and happiness. So one of the things about awakening is we have to realize that pain is inevitable and pleasure will cease. Okay? And we as humans, we've linked pleasure and happiness. And we've said pleasure equals happiness. Therefore, I just need more and more and more pleasure. Okay? And that will equal more and more happiness. The two are not actually linked. They're different. You can be incredibly happy and be suffering at the same time. I know it sounds odd, but you can be, things can be going wrong in your life and you can be actually happy at the same time by viewing that everything is totally okay, because life is like that. Life just goes up and down. Everything is impermanent. Everything ends. And we just don't want that impermanence to be. We want pleasure to go up and to stick and to stay there. And we want to stay in pleasure. But even if you can get that, you get bored with pleasure. So even people that get into an environment where everything's great, after a month, they're like, you know what? I'm a bit bored. I need another challenge. When they've earned, well, all they spend years earning $100,000. And then when they've got that, they go, you know what? I want $1 million. I'm not happy. When they got $1 million, guess what? They're going to want more. It's yeah. So I think I've forgotten your question, Buddy, but it's something along the lines of, if you stack pain and pleasure, yes, people will automatically go towards pleasure, but actually we want to get off that roller coaster altogether. We want to go to happiness, which is separate. And happiness actually ultimately involves you accepting pain.
Just a
Accepting.
question with, if I can just ask a question with that though, how do you relate the values into that though? Because I know, theory, we under as a, we know that it's non-self and impermanence, but then we talk about, identifying our values and living according to our values. Is that still against that, you know, pleasure,
No,
happiness model?
values definitely help us get to the very precipice of awakening. But awakening actually even transcends values. So even values are a made up illusion in the mind. But we definitely need values to motivate ourselves to get to go along this journey until such time as we're ready to leave them behind. So like that, even pleasure. I mean, even pleasure has its uses, because one of the things is it is more pleasurable. Like when you feel an immense amount of joy, that's pleasurable. And in fact, I won't go too much, but even in the meditation journey, you reach a state called jhanas, and in the jhanas, it's just enormous currents of pleasure that come through the body, and eventually, what takes you from the first jhana, which is all pleasure, into happiness, is you actually get bored of that pleasure. You get bored of it. You have it so much, you're like, oh, I actually feel like I just want happiness. And then you actually kind of transcend happiness, and you say, there's something even better than happiness, which is tranquility and contentment. And so you have the choice to go into this joy, but because you know it's on tap and you can have it whenever you want, you choose not to go there. You like to stay in contentment more than joy. So yeah, it's but in the initial stages, it can be the motivating factor for us to practice this path and practice, meditation, and go to coaching sessions and come to, events like this. Maybe some of you guys are here because you're hoping that this path will lead to more joy, which it does. But that won't be the ultimate reason why you awaken. But it gets you to those first few steps. Good questions. All right. So yeah, so yeah, so I came back to this slide that we saw earlier. We either distract ourselves or we seek therapy. Now, the difference between them is turning away or turning towards. And it's said that the path of awakening involves constantly turning towards. So one form of mindfulness in the West now is called acceptance and commitment therapy. And the acceptance is radical acceptance of whatever is happening in the present moment. And so therapy is, to a large extent, we turn away, and that does work for a long time, and it might work right up until your death. But eventually, sometimes it doesn't work, and then you've actually got to turn towards it and say, like, what is it? How is it being created? What am I doing to create this? What are the causes and conditions? And we don't want it. And there's a natural tendency not to want to turn towards pain and suffering, which is another reason why, if our suffering isn't too bad, we would rather turn away and distract ourselves with pleasure, with going on a holiday or whatever, and etc. Yeah, but if we keep turning towards it, and we actually get rid of all of those patterns in the mind, what is left is really truly amazing, and truly sacred. And then the fight. Oh, that's right. I was going to give you an example of what's the time now? 8:21. Yeah, so the final slide I've got is that it's a complementary path. Meditation provides the ability to see, and NLP or any coaching or therapy, whatever you want to call it, gives you the ability to transform. Both, actually. I mean, meditation can help see and transform, and same with therapy, but definitely meditation is more on the observation, seeing clearly side, and therapy is more on the actually changing the patterns side of things. So yeah, it enhances your clarity about the mental and emotional patterns. Then active techniques can transform those limitations. Practical bridges between insight and daily living. So it helps us in daily living as well, and therefore accelerate our natural movement towards freedom. You can see that AI has got in here and done its little bit on my points. My points were like that, but slightly more, this is a bit more flowery. Anyway, Nigel.
Thanks very much. Great information again, Peter. I just wanted to say I've had a bit of coaching myself. I've watched some Tony Robbins, and it seems a bit of a juxtaposition between this "you can do it" blah 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 to the subtleness of meditation. You know, it's the one extreme to the other, really, isn't it? To me, anyway. Would you say that?
Well, I mean, I'll just repeat what I said before, that coaching is brilliant in that it can help undo patterns.
Right.
Now, if you want to create other patterns which are useful in life, aka Tony Robbins, then that can be really, really helpful. And there is really nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with Tony Robbins and his style of coaching. And it can be useful. And even an awakened person might decide to go to Tony Robbins to become more useful in life. For example, if you still have a desire after you're awakened to help other people and you're not a good communicator, you still might want to go to learn how to be a good communicator. The difference is you don't have to. Once you're awakened, it really doesn't matter anymore. You've reached the end goal. You just don't suffer. So if you choose not to help others, you don't have to do that anymore. One hopes in the Mahayana tradition, of course, we take a vow to help others, but, you know, Pratyeka Buddhas, which is what we call, you know, there are awakened people who make a choice not to help others, and that's just the way it goes. But if you do coaching without understanding awakening, then you do run the danger a little bit of thinking that the ultimate goal is to have this really puffed up, powerful ego. And that actually will bring you down. So eventually, like, you know, even Tony Robbins, like when I see interviews with him, you know, he brought out a book called How to Make Billions. No, how to, I got it for free, so I've got it somewhere. Oh, here we are.
Yeah, I think it's the one with all the investors. Yeah.
Holy Grail of investing.
Yes.
Okay. And he puts himself up as this investing titan. And it's actually a really big sell job into his mate's little kind of investment trap. And I'm like, really, Tony? Do you need to be doing those hardcore sales things? You own millions and millions of dollars. You've had a great impact on the world. You know, you're 60 or 70 years old. You've got, you know, wonderful houses around the world. And it's just sort of, so people only do that if they feel that they need to want more. They want more. So he still wants more. No matter how much he's got, he'll tell you, oh, I've got everything. I don't want anything. But the very fact that he's doing these slightly cringy books to try to push you into his mate's investment programs tells me that he's still craving. Craving is still there.
A
So
few weeks ago, I went on one of his courses, and that's exactly what it was. It was a you must buy this, you must, it's exactly the same as what you just said, Peter.
So, and here's a titan. Like here's the top of the tree in this type of sort of stuff, and it's the same with other people, and that's fine. If he wants, that's life, and good luck to him. I hope that he gets billions of dollars, but I know that he'll never be happy. I know that everyone will never be happy until they awaken. I just know it in the core of my being. So, but I could be wrong, I could be completely wrong, but I believe the Buddha, when the Buddha says that, is the same. Yeah, good. Any other comments?
Yeah, no, Peter, I think it was really good this session in terms of, because like with me, I do a bit of coaching, but I do the like the meditation stuff as well. But just to see the integration of both and how they both complement each other is yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to call it a wrap. So
Okay.
I hope you enjoyed that particular presentation, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, same time. And yeah, toodaloo till then.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Peter. All right, thank you.